In this video, we're going to be talking about the diagnostic. The diagnostic is a two-part process that's given to the students on the very first class of the session so we can figure out where in our program they should start. Or in other words, in exactly which module they should start on. So there's two parts to it. There's the oral part and the written part. So the oral part includes this sheet, which you're going to get from us. And basically, you're going to start on the left side and work your way to the right. So first thing you're going to do is ask these questions out loud. And as they get harder, of course, you can also write them down if necessary. So you're going to start with, the very first row. And so you're going to ask all four of these questions. And if they get all four of those right, then you're going to keep going. So basically, you have to ask them in chunks of 4. So you keep asking until they can no longer answer confidently. But if it just so happens, let's say you're on the very first line and they can't answer 4 plus 5. And so they say that 4 plus 5 is 8. But you ask them one more time, okay, try one more time. What's 4 plus 5? And they say 9. And that's fine. You can keep going. Just make a note of it, but you can keep going. So let's say you keep going and you get to 9 minus 4. And they can't answer 9 minus 4. You ask them one more time, they still can't answer it. So you go to 8 minus 5. They still can't answer it. 7 minus 2? No. 6 minus 3? No. So that's when you know that, this is kind of at the limit of what they know. So once you figure that out, you're going to take whatever row they stop on and go across the page to this next column. So this next column is telling you which diagnostic packet you should use. So this is the written part of the test now. So let's say they stopped here. You'd go across and you'd give them this packet, the Add Sub Diagnostics Sub 1D. And you can find this on our website. This is what our website looks like with the modules. And so the first part, the Add Sub Diagnostic, is the module name. So you can find that over here. And then the packet name, sub 1D, you can find here. And you can just print that out. And if you're in the class, obviously, we'll print it out for you. Now, each packet that you print out contains a certain number of modules that it's testing. So in this case, this packet contains 3 modules. Sub 0 through 5 is 0 through 5, sub 6 through 9 is 0 through 5, and sub 6 through 9 is 6 through 9. Another thing you should keep in mind is that each row will correspond to these oral questions. So let's say this module, sub 0 through 5 to 0 through 5, contains questions like this: 3 minus 1, 5 minus 3, 4 minus 2, 5 minus 2. So it is possible to really get a good idea from the oral part of it to begin with. So it is possible to get a really good idea where they should start on from the oral diagnostic itself. But the written diagnostic is used to pinpoint more accurately which module they should use by giving them questions that are a little bit easier and a little bit harder, so you know exactly what the extent of their knowledge is. So a little bit more about the written diagnostic. All right, so let's say, you give them the packet, and let's say the packet, looks like this, and they're on, this page. So one thing you want to keep in mind with the written diagnostic is, like I said earlier, the packets will contain, these like 3 or 4 or 5 modules, right? So basically how it works is each page refers to one module. So in this packet, the first page would refer to the sub 0 through 5, 0 through 5 module. The second page would refer to sub 6 through 9 is 0 through 5. And the third page would refer to sub 6 through 9 is 6 through 9. So as you can see, it's getting progressively harder. So it's really important that as your student is doing the diagnostic, that you're watching over them, and that if he or she starts to struggle, you ask them to stop. And this is really important because, as I mentioned, the pages get harder, so it's very possible they won't be able to do one of the pages, the later pages, and you don't want them to get upset that they can't do it, because it's totally normal. So you watch over the student, and let's say they start struggling on this page let's say this is the first page of this specific packet. So they start struggling on this page. So you're going to look at the bottom of the page, and at the footer, it'll tell you what module you should have the student start on. So this is kind of what the footer looks like. So these first 2 things, so Add Sub Diagnostic Sub 1D is the name of the packet that you gave them, and this last part is the module name. So sub 0 through 5 to 0 through 5 is the name of the module that you want them to start on. So you should take note of that, and you want to give them the very first packet from that module during the next class. So one other thing you should keep in mind is that the diagnostics never go home, because the diagnostics are a tool for you to figure out where the student is, and you don't want them to take it home and try the packet out themselves, not under your supervision, because they might try some of the harder sheets and get frustrated. So you want to keep the diagnostic at the end of the class, And if need be, of course, you can always continue the diagnostic next week, the week after, if you feel like you haven't accurately figured out where they should start. But you should never let the diagnostic go home. All right, so let's talk a little bit more in detail about this. So now that you got the general idea, just a couple quick things you should remember. So the diagnostic is meant to figure out how much the child knows at that very moment. So you want to make sure that you're not teaching them anything new during the class. So let's say they're working on the packet and they don't know how to do a problem. Try not to teach them too much about anything new, like, oh, okay, this is how you subtract 7 or something like that, just because we want to see how much they know at the very beginning. So of course it's okay to help them a little bit and nudge them, and you want to make sure that they're not answering the questions just because they're being shy or something like that. You can definitely joke around with them and kind of get them to open up a little bit, but you want to make sure that you're not teaching them something completely new. And if you are teaching them something completely new, that you're making note of that, and you're not going to give them that concept as like the very first packet they're doing next week. You want to make sure that whatever module you do end up on is something that they, at the very edge of kind of what they know. So not something that's, completely new, but something they sort of know and they feel comfortable with, so they can build initial confidence. Another thing you want to make sure is that your students aren't using their fingers while doing the packets or even doing the oral questions, just because it's one of the tenets of our program that we don't allow students to use their fingers, just because we feel it creates a dependency. So you can definitely ask them not to use their fingers and just encourage them to do as much as they can without using their fingers. And if they can't do a problem, it's totally fine, and just skip the problem, or you can just reassure them in that way. Second to last thing is that you should keep in mind what grade they're in. So let's say they're in kindergarten. It's really not that uncommon to start with the very first module, or somewhere at least within these first 3 modules. And if they're in 3rd grade, let's say you find that they are struggling somewhere here, you want to kind of keep in mind that they're in 3rd grade, so they most likely know more than that. So you can go forward and kind of keep going until they really can't answer anything more after that. And then if necessary, you can go back and review. So just keep in mind what grade they're in and kind of generally how much knowledge they should know, so you can use that as a basis, because sometimes they'll struggle on one concept, but they really know more than that. Which brings me to my last point, which is that so you do find a gap in what they know. So let's say, they're going fine, they're doing all these questions fine, and all of a sudden, they can't answer 9 minus 4, not 8 minus 5, but they can answer all these harder problems like 11 plus 5 or 11 plus 8. So clearly, they do know more, but they're having a little bit of trouble in this area. So you can keep in mind that, okay, maybe you should start something a little bit harder, but you can always go back and review this module before you even start with something new. And you can find the review sheets over here under modules. You can go to review add sub or review muldiv, depending on what you're doing, obviously, and you can find review packets there to give to your child. Well, that's all for now, and I hope that this video was helpful and you learned a lot about how to do the diagnostic and all the things that are related to that. So I hope you have a great first class, and thank you so much for volunteering for OneInMath. Bye!